I think we're good now.
Okay, it's just about to tick over, so good evening and welcome to the ordinary meeting of Wellington Shire Council on this, the 18th of August 2020. We'll start our meeting tonight with the roll call, so if we can count them off. Councillor Crosley.
Yes, present. I can see and hear you.
Councillor McCubbin.
Yes, I can see and hear you, Mayor.
Councillor Marr.
Yes, I can see and hear you, Mayor.
Councillor Bye.
Yes, I can see and hear you, Mayor.
Councillor Hole.
Yes, I can see and hear you, Mayor.
Councillor Ripper.
Good evening. I can see, I can hear. Thank you.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I can see and hear you. Thank you very much.
And Councillor Rossetti.
I thought you were going to forget me, Mayor. Yes, I can hear you and I can see you. Thank you.
And I think we managed to get it right tonight, did I? Almost.
Yes.
Thanks. And all right. And in starting this meeting, just in regard to the situation, as the COVID-19 physical distancing requirements remain in place, the Minister's Good Practice Guidelines, MGPG-1, virtual meetings issued by the Minister for Local Government continue to apply pursuant to Section 87 of the Local Government Act 2020. These guidelines ensure that the local government decision-making can continue in line with COVID-19 requirements, and further details can be found on the Local Government Victorian website. These guidelines took effect from the 1st of May 2020 and will remain in place through to the 1st of November 2020. While members of the public can no longer attend meetings in person, we have provided options for you to interact with us virtually via our council meeting page on the Wellington Shire Council website. You are able to interact with council in two ways. Email through a specific question or comment relating to a particular council agenda item, and that should have been by no later than 1 p.m. Today on the day of the meeting, or for general communication with council via the webcasting chat room early in the meeting to ensure that your submissions can be dealt with at the end of the meeting. While we face a new way of gathering, we thank you for your continued support and look forward to a new way of keeping in touch with all of Wellington Shire. And in the current circumstances, there is no need to stand for the acknowledgement and the prayer, but we acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Gunai-Kurnai people, and pay respects to their elders past and present. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon the Wellington Shire Council, its councillors, officers, staff and their families. We pray for your guidance in our decisions so that the true good of the Wellington Shire Council may result to the benefit of all residents and community groups. Amen. We move on. I understand we have no apologies. And I understand that. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest? If not, we can move on to item A4, and that's in regard to the confirmation of minutes of the previous council meeting. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Mayor. I move the council adopt the minutes and resolutions of the ordinary council meeting of the 4th of August 2020.
And I'm happy to second that, Mayor.
Councillor Marr seconded that. Thank you. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Bye, happy to move on?
Yes, thanks, Mayor.
Okay. There's no business arising from the previous meeting, CEO?
No, Mayor, there's no business arising, nor late items, nor notices of motion, Mayor, for A5.
Thank you very much. You preempted my questions. Moving on to item A81, outstanding petitions. There are two items. One in regard to a request for the Gormandale Bike Track pump track, which arose in the meeting on the 4th of August, and also a request to seal Commercial Street in Yarram, also from the meeting of the 4th of August. And in regard to those matters, they'll be actioned by the 1st of September 2020, with reports from, in the first case, the manager from Natural Environment and Parks, and the second instance from the manager of Built Environment. Moving on, I understand we have no invited addresses, presentations or acknowledgements. No questions on notice. And that moves us on to item A11, which is in fact the Mayor and Councillors report. And in regard to that matter, Councillor Marr, before I understand you're going to move that, I might just highlight a couple of issues before you do that, and that's just in regard to a couple of key points. Firstly, I'd like to thank and acknowledge the active participation of all councillors in these difficult times, meeting and achieving things we need to do via Skype and other means. For my part, I'd like to highlight a couple of, I think, interesting events. We were able to, on the 8th of July, before further restrictions were imposed, to conduct citizenship ceremonies, and it's been said to me by officers that they don't know a mayor who hasn't enjoyed doing citizenship. This one was particularly special because we in fact had on that day, I think from memory, 8 citizenship ceremonies, as we had to socially distance the participants, so we actually ran 8 individual ceremonies, and by the end of it the singing of the national anthem was much improved.
Got better and better, Mayor.
Did indeed. Continue to report that the Native Timber Task Force continues to meet and is extremely active, and we'll keep the council and the community posted on matters as they progress. I was also pleased to be able to, with the fine assistance of the team at the Gippsland Art Gallery, under Simon and his team, we had to in fact announce the John Leslie Art Prize winners, and we had to do that virtually. So we in fact did that in the gallery. That was then broadcast on the day of the announcement, and I'd really just like to commend all of the participants. And also the very fine work of the gallery staff in putting that together. So that exhibition is available, I think, at this moment virtually, and in this current time, in the words of Molly Meldrum, do yourself a favour and have a look at that. It's well worthwhile. And last but not least, and as we in fact move into more restrictive times, and where we're looking to in fact support our traders who are engaged in online activities, click and collect, every other means of business they can do, can we commend that to our community to support all of our businesses and traders, business to business, every opportunity you get. And I was privileged on the 25th of July, again, before we were perhaps as restricted as we are, to be able to draw the winners from a competition organised by our sale traders, which had a terrific response. So again, it's great to see business getting out there, looking after each other and looking after the community. So I might pass to you, Councillor Marr, to move that motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the Mayor and Councillor activity report be noted.
I understand you're happy to second that, Councillor Rossetti.
I am. Thank you, Mayor.
Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Marr.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to just make mention of the fact that when you compare the activity report of tonight to the last few months, one can quite clearly see how activity has grown as everyone has become very much comfortable with the virtual meetings. And I'd like to say thank you to our team who have been working behind the scenes with all of us, ensuring that it is quite smooth in its practice. Furthermore, I'd like to say thank you to Sharon and the team for the citizenship ceremonies, because I know with the restrictions and the strict guidelines, there was a lot of work undertaken with regard to that. And I know that there were quite a few councillors who would have liked to have attended, but under the circumstances were unable to. And just lastly, we have, there was the new youth councillor induction that was undertaken, which is an important part of the youth council journey. There's apparently 9 in total, correct me if I'm wrong there, but we welcome them all and look forward to one day meeting them in person, hopefully in the not too distant future. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Yarram. Thank you for mentioning that. And it was a privilege to, in fact, have been able to attend that particular induction at a time when we were still able to do that. And again, your wishes are well placed. We'll move on to item C 1.1, which is the CEO's report, which is included in our papers but was omitted from the summary document. But C 1.1, the CEO's report. I understand, Councillor McCubbin, you're happy to move that?
Indeed, I am. I'd like to move the Chief Executive Officer's report be received.
And Councillor Byer, I understand you're happy to second that?
Yes, happy to second that, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Byer. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor McCubbin, your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd just like to congratulate the CEO and through him the organisation for the way it's worked through this very troubling times. And as you can see, the organisation continues to move on, meeting through the Native Timber Task Force and to other representatives, pushing the council's agenda at every level of government we can, trying to get as much as we can for our particular region. And I congratulate the CEO on the work that he's done. One that I'd like to mention in particular is the Startup Gippsland series. I and a number of other councillors were very pleased to be able to meet up with the Wellington cohort. Look, this is a really exciting series. What it does is encourage local business entrepreneurs to have a bit of a crack by starting up their particular ideas. And on the night, there was several new entrepreneurs who gave us a 1-minute pitch as to what they were going to do. And they cover all areas from agriculture to retail to all over the shop. And really, really exciting. Plus a couple of really good presenters in, I thought the founder of Merry People, Danielle Holloway, was wonderful. So wonderful that I passed her name on to my wife and it cost me $135 in new boots. But anyway, well worth it. Please, if you get a chance to encourage one of these young entrepreneurs, then please do so. They are wonderful ideas and I congratulate the CEO and the organisation for encouraging that. So well done to the team and well done with what they're doing. Good on them.
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin. If we move on to item C 1.2, which is in fact the June 2020 Council Performance Report. Councillor Stevens, do you happen to move that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move. So you want me to move it as that Council receive and note the June 2020 Performance Report is attached.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Stan, you're happy to second that, Councillor Crosley?
Yes, I'm happy to second that, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's interesting to note that basically this is really the draft financial report for the last financial year. I'd just like to note that there were a number of impacts, obviously, on this last financial year. I think we've had every form of emergency possible, but particularly we've been affected by the drought. Then we had asbestos issues at Aqua Energy, and of course also more recently, and I suppose one of the bigger impacts has been the COVID-19 pandemic. But it's great to see that we've had a very positive outcome for the year, and that we're basically in a very strong financial position. I think the net sort of positive impact on the budget has been $6.7 million in relation to operational costs and $3 million in relation to capital works, giving us a total positive impact on this budget and the bottom line of $9.7 million. Some of the things that have impacted us, particularly in relation to the operational budget, Mr. Mayor, have been things like the Grants Commission pre-budget and received in advance and then deferred from last year has pretty much been neutral on this budget. I think it's $200,000 negative it's impacted, but we've also had things like a reduction in our fees. Fortunately, it's only been reduced to about $0.7 million through to COVID. We've had a reduction in materials and service costs of $5 million. We've had a decrease in our depreciation of $1.2, and we've had a employees cost saving of $800,000. And in the capital side of things, we've actually had an extra $2.5 million received from the Roads to Recovery program, and so that they have all been impacts plus and minus on our budget. In regards to the capital expenditure for the year, Mr. Mayor, we did set out to spend originally about $40 million. We've actually expended $31 million, and I think that's not a bad outcome, where we consider that we've actually managed to spend 81% of a capital works program, even in these difficult times. There's been a number of programs completed. They're all referenced individually in the actual report to Council, Mayor, so I won't go into them individually, but just a couple of highlights to note that of the $9.4 million we haven't spent, there's been $6 million that's been deferred due to community consultation or liaising with other authorities. There was some unsuccessful grant applications, totaling $1.5 million. There's been a problem getting contractors, of course, mainly due to the bushfires. That's impacted $1 million on our capital works program, and there's been a $0.9 million delay in getting some planning for some core information on programs. But overall, I think we can say that we've had a very good year, all things considered, Mr. Mayor. And as I think I said already, we can be very pleased to see that we've got a very strong balance sheet, and we're well positioned financially to enter the 2020-21 year. And I'm not sure if I met me 3 minutes or not, Mr. Mayor.
Well done, Councillor Stevens. We move on to item C2.1, and Councillor Bye will catch up the time difference on this one. So it's C2.1, Assembly of Councillors. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move the council note and receive the attached Assembly of Council records for a period 27th of July 2020 to the 9th of August 2020.
And I'm happy to second.
Thanks, Councillor Ma. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Bye.
That's fine, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll move on to item C2.2, the 2017 to 2021 Council Plan Progress for the 2019-20 period. I understand, Councillor McCubbin, you're happy to move this?
Indeed I am. I'm happy to move the Council receive the attached update on progress of the 2017 to 21 Council Plan for the 2019-20 year.
I understand, Councillor Crossley, you're happy to second that?
Yes, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor Crossley. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor McCubbin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, we don't often do this, and I'm probably not very good at it, but I'll try and give it a bit of a crack. Being a former school teacher, this is a bit like a report, if you like, on the year's activities for Master Wellington. And look, the score that you give people, well, that'll be up to the electors in October, I guess. But I think it's really important that the council plan is what we say we're going to do, and this is a report back on whether we did it or not. So this is a really important document in determining how well we met the objectives that we signed off on. Now, let me talk about some of the things that we did. So we split it into a number of sections, and it's well worth a good read. It's a good document. Firstly, under communities, we've given away $219,000 in grants, $123,000 in quick response grants, and another $8,750 in newsletters, which means we keep up to date with our local communities. In surface and infrastructure, we have a range of activities which we've been involved in. Over $80 million of municipal developments. And if you look at that, that compares to the rural average of $10 million. So we had $80 million. Most large rural councils had about $10 million. Now, if you look at some of the capital expenditure that we've done ourselves, it's been a huge amount of money, $45 million spent within the municipality over the last 12 months, the majority of which has been on roads and other infrastructure which people think are important, which they are important. But there are some special cases that I should mention. The Aqua Energy business case has been developed. We'll be showing you that shortly. The Yarram outdoor pool, we've been able to secure the funding for that, and more information on that will be coming shortly. And the Cameron Sporting Complex is only 45% complete at this stage, but it's certainly a really exciting development that we've been working on over the last 12 months. The Maffra streetscape and many other things have also been completed. In terms of the natural environment, the big ticket item was our sustainability strategy. And this has given guidance to us in terms of our waste, our carbon reduction, our renewable energy, and so on and so forth. I reckon the sustainability strategy is the envy of Gippsland, and I recommend that you all have a good look at it. In terms of lifelong learning, the library and gallery continue to be our highlights throughout the year. 168,000 people visited the library, and the gallery had over 29,000 people as well. These things, I think, particularly through COVID, are important that we keep our communities together, keep those lifelong education going. There are other things in economic and organisational and so much more, and each of them are graded against what we said we'd do and also graded against similar facilities in other areas. So, for example, a community satisfaction with our streets and our footpaths. Well, the large rural average is 55%. We said we'd get about 54%. We actually achieved 60, so we did over the average for the other large shires. Look, it goes on to detail the over 170 projects that we did throughout the year. It gives a bit of an update on how we went with them. So for a report card, what am I going to say? Well, Master Wellington, you were distracted last year with bushfires and COVID, but you continue to achieve amongst the top in the class, and well done for your hard efforts. I hope we see a better improvement next year, but certainly a good thing to build on. So I thank the organisation and the councillors for their hard work over the last 12 months. Good done. Well done.
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin. Does that mean I think we can all go up into the next class? Is that the way it works?
Some of you will and some of you won't.
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin. We move on, in fact, to item C 3.1, 90 Mile Beach Subdivisions Compulsory Acquisition of Flood-Prone Land. I understand, Councillor McCubbin, you're happy to move this resolution?
Indeed I am. I'd like to move that the Council resolve to commence the statutory process to compulsory acquire flood-prone land in accordance with the Notice of Declaration pursuant to Section 172-2 of the Planning and Environment Act of 1987, dated the 8th of September 2016, in the 90 Mile Beach subdivisions described as restructure plan stages 1, 24 and 33 through to 37 in the Wellington Planning Scheme, only where persons with an interest in specified land can be contacted after the conduct of diligent inquiries or are willing but unable to transfer land to council. Refer to attachment notice of declaration. And 2, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign all notices and documents in accordance with the Land Acquisition and Compensation Act of 1986 and Transfer of Land Act in 1958.
I understand you're happy to second that, Councillor Stevens?
Yes, I'm very happy to second that motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Stevens. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This is a continuation of the long-running and long-standing issue down on the 90 Mile Beach. Council continues to work through the process. This is the last tranche of compulsory acquisitions that we are looking at within that area and pertain to what's called the mudflat islands in the middle of Lake Reeve. There's a number of properties there which, of course, could never be developed. And we've struggled through the process to find those people through one thing or another. So what we do is we're declaring that we can compulsory acquire them. It is Council's opinion that these should come under a common set of management, which I personally support. But that's not what the issue is here. The issue is about compulsory acquiring that land so it can be added to the existing bunch. What it means, it's a process by which you advertise in local papers and so on. You have to put money aside, which is put in the Lands Office and other things. So there's a particular process you go through. But I'd like to congratulate the Council on its diligent efforts to try and pursue and find those people. And of course, once you've tried every avenue you can, the only thing left is to compulsorily acquire that land so that, as I mentioned before, you can start to put it under a consistent management structure. So thank you very much, councillors, for supporting that.
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin. We move on to item C 4.1, which is Bruce Street Yarram Special Charge Scheme Final Cost Certificate. Councillor Stevens?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that Council adopts the final cost certificate for the Bruce Street Special Charge Street Construction Scheme, scheme number 1801, and Council officers prepare the final apportionment amounts due from property owners for the Bruce Street Special Charge Street Construction Scheme, scheme number 1801, based on the initial estimated cost of $18,000.
I understand you second that, Councillor Marr.
Yep.
Thanks, Councillor Marr. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, this scheme is a really good example of where the adjoining ratepayers eventually got their act together and worked with council, and I'd like to thank the council officers for their efforts in relation to this scheme. For several years, I had abutting ratepayers in Bruce Street complaining about the condition of the street, and this is a really quite unique street for anyone that's not aware of Bruce Street. It was for some reason partly constructed many years ago, and approximately 50% of the street was fully constructed, and the northern 50% was partly constructed to the point where it had curb and channel in place, and also a formed road, and it just wasn't sealed. And I basically said to several ratepayers, well, if you really want to get this scheme, if you want this road completed, there's no better time than at present, because the council has a very favourable policy of paying and constructing special charge scheme roads. And eventually the ratepayers did write to council, and here we have the result now. I think the road, I went past there actually at lunchtime, and it's looking very, very, very good, that street now. I think all the ratepayers are very happy, and they've had this work done at a very reasonable price. And so I would commend to anybody that thinks they would like to look at getting their street constructed to approach the council, because there's no time like the present, Mr. Mayor. This has been a very great outcome for all involved. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Stevens. I understand the CEO there's no urgent business.
None, Mayor.
We have no gallery or chat room comments, CEO.
None received, Mayor.
Okay, and I understand, councillors, no one has a need to move into closed session. I'll take silence as indicating that, and on that basis, at 6:26, I